This is Breaking the News Plus. I'm Jana Shortle. We are going into a hot summer weekend. And do you know what your political parties are doing in Minnesota? They're having parties. They're having endorsing conventions. It doesn't sound sexy, but it actually matters. And to talk to me about that is my friend, Amy Frederiksen. She does all things politics for us here at KARE 11. And we're going to start with the Republican Party. Their convention is going on right now in the great city of Duluth. And we start with the Republicans because they have a little bit more what you're going to do to it. The Democrats is kind of settled business. So the big thing is, who will the party endorse for governor? Who do you think?
Well, going into it, I definitely think Lisa Demuth, current Speaker of the House, Lisa Demuth had the momentum. Everything I saw, and I'm involved locally, and I'm still getting texts, right? Like I see Lisa Demuth TV commercials. I get Lisa Demuth texts. Her team was the most organized. I know people that are Lisa Demuth captains at the caucus at the convention, and so. And she's just the most high profile, obviously best funded candidate for governor. But now I have folks on the ground telling me it's not a foregone conclusion. In fact, they're the ones that I know that are there for Demuth are not fully confident, never should be, right? But there seems to be a question mark on it. There's some definitely drama and apparently a T-shirt cannon at the GOP convention. So
hey, summer's no bummer, Amy. You got to have a T-shirt cannon, no matter.
I mean, if you got to spend you have to spend a nice summer weekend at a convention.
It's a party for a reason. It's a party for a reason.
T-shirt cannon. That's right.
Okay, so not a foregone conclusion for Speaker Demuth. And so what does that mean? Is there a possibility that it's Kendall Qualls, or is there a possibility that's Mike Lindell?
I can't even imagine, but I will tell you some of the things that I've come out of there as there's a lot of like, this rhino is on the floor. Someone sent me a picture of, there's things going on around that. This is the party core. And by the way, the Democrats are in Rochester, and it is the very party core. I'm hearing a lot of dissent for Amy Klobuchar there, right? Like there's a movement. So that is what you get at conventions, is the absolute party insider. But boy, it's the best shot in how many cycles that GOP have to actually take a statewide race, and we're going to touch on the U.S. Senate race, I'm sure, as well. And to pick the right candidate is the only path. And what I would say to my fellow Republicans, like, you've been voting for purity or some sort of alliance with Trump for the last how many cycles, and we're not winning, which means you're not getting any of your agenda accomplished. You need to win to actually have a seat at the table, and so you got to pick the right person for that. And we'll see if this is a break from the last couple cycles. And they don't choose someone like a Mike Lindell. Look, Kendall Qualls is a good candidate. I just don't know that he's got the experience, the chops, the fundraising ability that Speaker Demuth does. And by the way, I would also love to see the first woman governor of the state. Either way, right? If we got
so bananas that in 2026 it has not happened in Minnesota.
Hasn't happened yet.
Whew. Let's move to that U.S. Senate race, because you do have in the Republican on the two vying for it, the two most well-known people vying for it in the Republican ticket is Michelle Tafoya, never held office, but certainly a well-known commodity for her role in the NFL, and has raised a lot of money and has gotten some support already, a lot of talk about her. And then you have Adam Schwarzy, who has run for office before. Between those two, and they have both, at least I should say, Tafoya has said, no matter what the GOP decides, who they endorse or not, she's going to go all the way to the primary. So, you think,
and you also have Royce White, right? Who was our candidate
I did not bring that up for you.
I know, but I'm just saying there he is, right? And he was our candidate last time, so you cannot say that's out. So, I think that Tafoya will getting the endorsement for her is probably not likely. Usually when somebody says on either side that they're not abiding by the endorsement, the endorsing convention kind of goes, well, I don't know. There are some notable exceptions, I would say. Years ago, it was Mike, now I had his name and then I've forgotten. It was 2018, I think. Ran for U.S. Senate, said he was not abiding by the endorsement, but wanted the endorsement, and he got it. And so that there's an exception to the rule, and I think actually his approach was very smart. And I'll come up with his name very shortly because he did a good job at that. But I do know that Michelle Tafoya is on the ground. I know that she was there last night. I know that she was there today. So I don't think that she is giving the endorsing delegates like the short end of the stick. I think that she's there and she's being respectful. She's just also saying that she wants that more Republicans to be able to weigh in on this, which, by the way, people have to remember, right? The endorsing convention is a couple thousand. A primary allows tens of thousands of either DFL or Republican to go to the polls and pick their candidate. And so, I've done the endorsing convention. I've chaired the state convention before. And I would just say that I think it's great, and there's a lot of good things that come out of it, but not necessarily the best and strongest candidate always.
Interesting. So. Yes, and that Royce White example, I would just, you and I have talked before that it would be in the Republican Party of Minnesota's best interest to just not do that again.
Oh, please don't do that again. And also with, Mike Lindell, please don't do that, right? Like, you have a couple good candidates there. Let's be strategic. Let's have, even if you're a Democrat, don't you want to have somebody to run against on the other side that is an actual candidate and debating ideas? We need two strong parties, and Republicans, it's going to be a tough year anyway. The economy is going to be the top issue overall. And it's going to be tough for Republicans, with the Republicans in charge of everything in DC, with the President Trump on tariffs and Iran and gas prices. By the way, he won largely on a ticket of inflation's out of control, costs are way up, and I'm going to take them down. And now look at, we're paying $4.50 at the gas pump. People don't forget that. People vote on that. So it's going to be a tough year anyway for Republicans. But I think in Minnesota, we could diverge because of that fraud issue. Right. And we talked about that, right? You have potentially Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who has seemingly sort of kind of slipped by being tied with the Walz administration, where she's been for 8 years, right? She's been a major player in the Walz administration, and yet really doesn't even really get asked the question about it on fraud, which is an issue that literally drove the governor out of the race. That was the issue why he left the race.
Absolutely.
And so I think there's still an opening here for Republicans, but if they don't have the right candidate, they don't. And also, Amy Klobuchar, if she is going to be their presumptive nominee this weekend, obviously, and she's a juggernaut candidate with talk about name ID, talk about fundraising ability.
Right. You brought up the Democrats. We saved them to talk about last because there's just less suspense at their convention. Angie Craig has already said she's just not seeking the endorsement to run for that open Senate seat, but she will be going against, on her party side, Peggy Flanagan, who you've brought up as the lieutenant governor. And those issues haven't really been thrown at the feet of Lieutenant Governor yet. But I would bet, Amy, that is going to happen once we get in a head-to-head race. Whoever her opponent is, if she is the opponent facing the GOP, that GOP opponent is going to go hard on her about fraud.
Well, it has to be, right? If there's two major issues in this, right, in Minnesota, it's Metro Surge. And that issue has been playing out in the DFL primary because largely for her Laken Riley vote, Congresswoman Craig is having sort of answer for that, right? So the other big issue is fraud. And I think that it's been a miss so far on the Craig's camp for not pointing that out. And I don't know if they will or not, but for sure, Republicans in that U.S. Senate race, it needs to be their number one, number two, number three issue against
and
potential.
Then you go. It's a less simple path when you talk about whoever the GOP nominee is versus Amy Klobuchar, because she has nothing to do with fraud in Minnesota. It just doesn't have anything.
No, you can say she would be a follow-on of the Walz administration, sure. But she's also a candidate in such her own right and such a known entity, right? It's just not. There's no evidence of, it's hard to make that argument. You could try to make it, and you have to try to make it, that she would just continue on the policies, but she's a very known entity.
Yeah, no drama at the convention there in the race. Who's going to get the DFL nomination for governor? It's Amy Klobuchar. She did make news early today by announcing who her lieutenant governor running mate would be. And it's the former mayor of Fergus Falls. Is that a smart pick? Is it a boring pick? Is it an exciting pick? What do you say?
I think a lot of people will go, whoo. But I think being a Metro, somebody from the Metro, she picked somebody from Greater Minnesota. So there's some boxes that he checks. And ultimately, in the end, when folks are going to the ballot, they're either voting for Amy Klobuchar or they're voting for the GOP candidate, right? I can't imagine who she would pick. That there's no one that would kind of outshine her on the ballot, or even, necessarily be like a big, huge win or a big, huge detriment. So, I think that most people will not remember the pick by tomorrow. And that's not anything against him, right? I'm sure he's a great guy. It's just not an exciting pick. And right, it's not meant to be.
Yeah. Same on the other side, too. People are talking about Speaker Dameth, not who she named as lieutenant governor. People talk about
which, by the way, she did name.
She did. Yeah, but I can't remember their name.
Wilson. Right? Yeah.
Mr. Wilson.
Former ran for state auditor. But also, by the way, Amy Klobuchar's lieutenant governor was running for state auditor. He was in the DFL endorsement battle for state auditor, and then I assume has obviously dropped out to be lieutenant governor candidate. But people are going, what's the state auditor?
Well, I think if we have a state that's really having to, and we're going to have a long relationship with the prosecution of fraud, like this isn't going away because the fraud has already happened, but to get through all of this prosecution, our investigative reporters have told me, this could be years that it's going to be front page news because it will continue to be prosecuted, people will continue to be found out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's probably not bad to pick an auditor because auditors are good at fraud finding.
I think the AG's race is going to play in this, right? Because prosecution of this is going to be, and the question has to be, why in 2026 are we just coming down with some of this stuff, right? It's impossible to believe. It's impossible to believe that the departments and the administration didn't know at least some of this was going on. It's just, how could you? And there's no way it was just found out. It's going to continue. And I thank goodness we're finally getting some prosecutions. We're finally finding guilty parties. But there will be, I think, a political price to pay as well for folks.
Yeah, and to me, it's almost, and maybe this is too simplistic. I want your thoughts on this. When I think about who Minnesotans are going to vote for governor, whatever their choice, it will be presented, and if, as I imagine it, in ads, political ads, one versus the other is, are you going to continue to want to change the state because the fraud was so bad, so you must change the party in power? Then you might vote for the Republican candidate. Or are you going to look at kitchen table issues in your life right now and the cost of living and say, Republicans have not made my life better, I have to go with a Democrat? It seems like that's the binary choice.
That's it. It is. And ordinarily, I would tell you every single time it's the economy, stupid, right? Like every single time that has won out. In this case, the fraud issue has really and truly become such a front and center issue because it is so huge to be not ignored. And these prosecutions and the numbers are they're staggering. Yeah. That's what, I really have, and I've thought this for a while, like to have an issue so localized be such a major issue is really, really hard to have. It's just very difficult. But it can, you think back to the Paul Wellstone, Norm Coleman race, and Senator Wellstone tragically passed away in a plane crash. And it should have been actually a no-brainer where the Democrats would sort of sweep into power, right? Like there would be just this, because the Republicans stopped campaigning, rightfully so. Norm Coleman stopped campaigning. Everyone stopped. Former Vice President Mondale stepped in to sort of fill the gap. And there was this one moment of of a kind of a memorial service that turned into a big rally.
Yeah.
And that changed the entire election. So, and went against all kinds of things going nationally. It didn't matter what people in Minnesota saw, they did not like. And they not only voted for Norm Coleman, the Republican, they voted for Republicans down the ballot. And Republicans, like in the state Senate, they won 13 seats. They won seats they'd never imagined they would win. So a local event can overcome what's happening nationally, but it has to be really big and really on top of mind.
Right. And just a final thought before I go, you can, if you're thinking about the whole issue of fraud and the staggering amounts of money that are taxpayer dollars, that can, if the message is delivered by the Republicans in an effective way, that could sway people that are thinking about the economy. When things are tough for you and your family, and you're looking at all of this money that just went away that could have made your life easier, even though you're not going to get that money, it's a way of thinking about money or the economy that can make people really frustrated and angry.
And I would take it even another step, because yes, Minnesota taxpayers, this came out of your pocket. And now, wouldn't you love to have that? But also, as the economy has become more difficult, need is greater, right? Money, folks that need food shelf and food bank help, folks that need help, assistance with childcare, folks that need help with a disabled child, and this money came directly out of the programs intended to help those folks. And so it's not only from you taxpayers, but money that Minnesotans paid in, intended to help the folks that are now struggling even more, because $5 for you and I is a big deal at the pump, but for some families it's insurmountable, and those very families that should be helped, that money was taken from those programs. And that's how I would, if I ran the world, I'd say Republicans, that's how to tell the people of Minnesota what it means, because it does impact everyone's pocketbook.
Well, it's going to be a beautiful weekend, and we're also going to get some answers on where this race goes from here come the beginning of next week. And it will be interesting. So we'll have more chats with you, Amy Frederiksen. And thank you.
I can't wait. I do love an election season.
I know you do. I can just see you're like Christmas morning right now. It's going to happen over and over and over. So much to talk about. Well, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
As always. And thanks for watching Breaking the News Plus. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here next week.